Welcome to the Barrel House here at Old Glory Distilling Company. Today, we're going to talk about how we make our spirits from start to finish, all from scratch.
When I was young, my daddy said, gotta keep one eye open in your bed, 'cause there's a time coming when the devil gonna come for you. So my trigger fingers, stay prepared. I've got my weapon and I got my prayers, 'cause if you don't run this town, they'll walk all over you. Run out loud, gotta run on. Keep on running till the sun goes down. Run out loud, better run on. Run all day till you can't be found. Run out loud, gotta run on. Keep on running till the sun goes down. You can outrun the devil, but you ain't gonna outrun me.
We start off with local grain from local farms, corn, wheat, rye, and barley, different percentages depending on which product we're making. It's ground up, cooked, fermented, distilled, and then aged here in our 10,000 barrel warehouse. We palletize all of our barrels, as you can see behind me, and we're going to walk through step by step how each of these steps is done. Bourbon has to be at least 50% corn. Our recipe uses 73% corn, so that is slightly unique to us. It has to go in a brand new charred oak barrel every time. We can't use a used barrel for that. It can't come off the still over 160 proof. We come off the still around 125. The distillate can't go into a barrel over 125 proof, and for us, we go in at 120. So there's a lot of different nuances that make our bourbon unique. Something that makes Tennessee bourbon unique is the maple charcoal filtration process that we use. Tennessee whiskey, by Tennessee state law, has to go through a sugar maple charcoal filter before it goes into a barrel. That is what takes regular bourbon and makes it a Tennessee bourbon or a Tennessee whiskey. We source all of our grains locally here from the state of Tennessee. That's important to us, not only to support our local farmers, but also contributes to that local flavor that makes our Tennessee bourbon and our Tennessee whiskey unique. We also send all of our spent grains to cattle farmers. They pick up all of our spent mash and feed that to their cattle. The farmers around here are super important to our process. You want to use high quality ingredients. For us, using local farms and local grains allows us to keep a close eye on those products. We're buying them direct from these farms, where we have direct access to those fields while they're growing and all the way through to the time we grind them up here on site. So it's super important to us. All of our barrels are charred white American oak barrels. The federal government requires that white American oak is the only type of wood that a barrel can be made from to age Tennessee bourbon, or just bourbon in general. Our Tennessee bourbon uses a number 4 char, which is a very heavy char. Our Tennessee whiskey uses a number 3 char, which is a slightly lighter char than a number 4. Both of those contribute different flavor profiles and unique characteristics to each product. During the milling process, the whole grains are ground up into a flour-like consistency. When it's ground up into a flour-like consistency, that allows the cooking process to break down those starches into the fermentable sugars that we need for the fermentation process. To walk you through what that mashing process is, we take the 4 grains, corn, wheat, rye, and barley. We grind them up in our hammer mill on site into a flour-like consistency. Augers take that up and over to our 2,500 gallon mash cooker. We cook the grains at different temperatures, and what that allows, it allows us to convert the starches in the grains into sugars. Corn, wheat, rye, those are the 3 main grains that contribute the most flavor to our products. Malted barley is the last grain that we add, and barley has enzymes in it. Enzymes are what do the starches in corn, wheat, and rye into fermentable sugars for the fermentation process. We use different types of yeast for different types of products. Yeasts contribute a lot to the final flavor profile. Our Tennessee bourbon uses 19% rye as the flavor grain. Rye and wheat are your 2 main flavor grains in American bourbons. And so for our Tennessee bourbon, that 19% rye, we specifically use a strain of yeast that performs really well and brings out the characteristics of the rye that we love. Our Tennessee whiskey is a 19% wheat as the flavor grain, and so that specific yeast strain is one that we use that really brings out the flavors that we look for in a wheated bourbon. The fermentation process happens in 2,500 gallon open top fermenters. It takes around 3 to 5 days for the process to complete. What's happening in those fermentation tanks is those yeast are eating the sugar, turning that sugar into 3 different byproducts: alcohol, carbon dioxide, and heat. One unique thing about those fermentation tanks is they are actively cooled. The heat that is created can create bad flavors if we don't control the heat of the whole fermentation tank. Those fermentation tanks are cooled, kept around 90 degrees for the different yeast strains that we use. That's the optimal temperature for us throughout the entire process. Just like every step in the process, each step contributes different flavor profiles. On our 14-inch continuous column still, there's a lot of variables that we're able to control, and we control those variables depending on what product we're making. It definitely contributes to the flavor profile. Pot distilled whiskey tastes very different from column distilled whiskey. The type of still, the way we run the still, all of those different variables play a big part in the final flavor. We have two different stills here, a 500-gallon pot still and a 14-inch continuous column still. Both produce phenomenal whiskey, but they both produce different flavor profiles. We really like the flavor profile that we have coming off of our continuous column still, and our pot still produces some great single barrels as well. When we're distilling, especially on a pot still, there's 3 different cuts that are made: a heads cut, a hearts cut, and a tails cut. Alcohols called heads have a lot of flavor, but don't have great flavor on their own. So the hearts cut is what we're actually going to keep or bottle. That is the sweet spot, the good tasting product we're looking for. The tails at the very end are very high boiling point alcohols, getting close to the boiling point of water. The alcohol percentage coming off the still starts to drop. The hearts cut is a very artistic cut on a pot still where you're keeping a little bit of heads, a little bit of tails, and blending them all together to make that true hearts cut that goes into a barrel. That's how it's done on a pot still. On the continuous column, because it's all coming off the still at the same time, we're still making a heads and a tails cut. A lot of the tails go out the bottom where they're simply not evaporated, and a lot of the heads are vented off so they don't get condensed back into the final liquid that comes off where we barrel it. Copper is extremely important in the distilling process. If we didn't have copper, there would be a sulfur-like smell. Copper takes away that sulfur-like smell of the final product. Once the whiskey's distilled, it's gonna come off of our column about 125 to 130 proof. We'll need to proof it down to barrel proof for us, which is 120. We will then filter it through maple charcoal, which gives it that Tennessee touch, and then goes into a barrel and sits in this barrel house for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, depending on which product. We know the profile we're looking for is around a minimum 3 to 4 years. So that's really where we start tasting barrels. We'll taste through maybe 20 to 40 different barrels for each blend. And then there's some where we'll find a single barrel that we pull and set off to a side. That's a really unique flavor for its own bottling, and others that go really well for one of our blends. Those 2 blends that are primary are our small batch blend, which is a 90 proof final product, and Wild and Bond, which is a 100 proof final product. So strictly by flavor, aroma, finish on the palate. There's a bunch of different variables that we use, but by no means are we just picking a lot of barrels and dumping them. We taste every single barrel before it's done.